Okay, we're going to look at how we're going to do a complete drawing. So this is a drawing of a stool designed by Max Bill, and as we can see here, we've got a couple of interesting things. I'm just going to zoom in here. We've got this top here that's finger jointed to the sides here, a rail that goes across, and if we look down here, we've got this shoe here that has got a rebate, and that fits into this piece here. So we're going to look at all those. In model space, we've got almost like an assembly line showing how we constructed this. Here we can see the final assembled object. There's this slip at the bottom, our rail, and the top and the sides with the finger joints. And this shows how we first started. So we've got a profile in 2 dimensions, and this was simply constructed just using a 2D polyline. And then the simplest way of making this is as an extrusion, and we did this here. This shows how something would be made. You'd extrude this piece. So extrude, click, enter, and it was 18mm thick. And then what I would do is I would zoom in here, and I would change my UCS. What I want to do is I want to align my UCS so it's on this face here. So I would make sure my object snap is on, click here, click on this endpoint here to align my x-axis with this point, and then I'm going to click on this endpoint here to align my y-axis here. And so now we've got our z here, our y going this direction, and our x going this direction. And the reason we're doing that is so we can draw a line along this face here. And that's going to be the line for our rebate. Now we've drawn that line, and just to make things a bit clearer, we're going to shade or change our visual styles from hidden to shaded with edges. And we can see those lines there. What we're going to do is we're going to press pull a solid shape for our rebate. So we press pull, and just make sure that you're actually selecting that area. And there we go, we've rebated it 6 into this shape. Now I typed in -6 because I was going into the shape. Really you just have to test whether it's 6 or -6 as a rebate. Okay, so now we're going to use the subtract command to take this solid piece away from this. Now all these commands are available in your 3D Basics toolspace. And here we have subtract, press pull, extrude, box, revolve, sweep. Right? So we're going to use subtract. So click on subtract. So we select the first item, the item we're going to subtract from, one item found, and then right click to enter that, and then we select the other item and press return. And there we have it. We've subtracted that item. Now that sometimes can be a slightly confusing way of doing things. So the alternative is that we create our edge 6 mil away from here, and then we press pull 2 rebates upwards. So I'll show you how to do that now. So here what I've done is I've created the extrusion, but it's 6 mil short of this base or slider, right? And now what I can do is I can press pull up these two edges up 6 mil and leaving a gap of 6 mil. So I press pull. I'm just going to make sure that I'm selecting this edge. Yeah, there we go. Select this one as well. We can see it there. I actually selected both edges and turn. Just gave it a dimension of 6, and that's how I created that. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is press pull up that rebate for the edge piece that's at the bottom. If I zoom in here, we see what we're going to do. So we've got this piece here, and we're going to create a rebate for that. So at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to actually make sure that this is on a different layer. This is going to be on leg 2, as we see here. And this is on a different layer. And the reason we're going to do that is just so we can see it. Okay? So what we see here is the final piece. And we've done the exact same operation where we've made a UCS along this face, but what we've done is we've actually turned off this layer. So let's see how we would do that. So this is on leg 2, and this is on a different layer. So if I go into home, I've got my layers here, and I know that that side piece is on the section layer, so I can turn it off. Right, now I can see this in isolation. Now I can change my viewpoint. Let's go into WCS top, swing that around, and zoom in. That's where I want to be. So I pan across, and zoom in, and I would change my UCS using UCS, make sure my snap is on, put my X axis there, and I'm just going to make sure my Y axis is here. And now I'm on this face, and I can draw my polylines along that face, right? And now what I can do, since I've drawn my polylines, I can use press pull to extrude this face outwards. And there we go, I gave it an extrusion of 6, well, it's a press pull of 6, okay. Now if I turn my layer back on, I can see that this lower piece here is still engaged with this upper piece. And so that's a good way of doing your 3D drawings. Everything is done in 2 dimensions. You're keeping everything in 2 dimensions, and like where pieces engage with each other, you try to keep them engaged with each other, and you're just drawing them in situ. Okay, so let's look at how we create the rest of this. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make our rail. So we had drawn the rail and we've kept on copying it, but we can't see our rail at the moment. So let's show our rail, we just change our visual style to 2D wireframe. There's the base of the rail here. And we're going to extrude that out. So extrude is probably the easiest one to use here, E-X-T-R-U-D-E. And a simple way of making sure we're getting the rail is either just to select it, or we could do a window polygon and do that. So to do a window polygon, just to remind people, we left click on the screen and drag it downwards, and then anything totally within that window will be selected. So that's selected. So it's going to be extruded 400, right? So we extrude that 400. And so it's a good idea at this point, probably to change back to shades of grey, to change this layer to rail, because we're going to need to change that rail to a different layer at a later stage so we can do our exploder axisymmetric. So I'm just going to select that and right click onto properties. It's on the layer rail at the moment, so that's okay. Let's change this. I know that's on the wrong layer, so that's on section, which is wrong. It should be on leg 01, and just check that's on leg 02. Yep, and they are. Okay, so just to make that a bit clearer, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change the color of that so I can see that they're on different layers, and they are. Okay, so that's leg 2, and that's the side is leg 01. Okay, so now the next thing is that we're going to copy this upwards so it's on the edge of the rail. I know this is 18mm thick. I know this rail is 400 from the outer edge to this outer edge. So that means I have to copy this up 400 less 18. So I just go CP, select everything there, and now I can copy it up. And I can actually copy it up just using the copy command without having to go into any sort of 3D moves or anything, because I can see the plus Z there. So I'm going to copy it 382. Okay, that's all I need to do. And now the next thing is I'm going to extrude this. I'm going to make sure it's on the right layer. So again, I'm just going to select that. That's on the section layer. Make sure it's on the top layer. So I'm going to need to have it on the top layer. Okay. Turn. And now what I'm going to do is extrude that as well. Extrude. Extrude. I select that. Enter. And I'm going to extrude at 18mm. Right. Now, the next thing to do is I could rotate this upwards and have it sitting on that, but that's usually quite difficult to do. So what I'm going to do is rotate this, and if I rotate this up and have it sitting on that, I'll have to change my views around, and it's usually better just to have everything sitting as it would do in real life in your world coordinate system. So I'm going to rotate this. So I'm going to use a 3D command called 3D rotate. Use 3D rotate, and we select our objects. Once I've selected my objects, I can right click to enter. Now this is the really important part. I'm going to specify a base point, and I'm going to specify this base point down here because that's sitting on the zero of the Z plane, and I'm going to rotate it around that point. So I'm going to click here, and then the great thing about this is I can select the axis. So I don't have to change my UCS doing this. So I select this axis here, and then I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. So I'm just going to put in 90 there because I find it easier to do. And there we have it rotated. So we can pan around here. Now, I don't find the rotate gizmos and the move gizmo as kind of accurate as just 3D rotate. Okay, so now we're going to move this top onto this piece here. And I find the easiest way to do that is just to use the move command. So M for move. I'm going to select this, and I'm going to select the dimension as well. And in an ideal world, what you have done is do all of your dimensions on the flat, and then you just rotate everything in one go. So you're not dimensioning in your 3D space. Okay, so again, I'm going to select this corner here, and I'm going to select this corner up here, right? And there we go, they snap together. Okay, so that's how that is done. So let's look at how we're going to present this in our layout space. So here we have our drawings. We have our side elevation, our plan, our front elevation, a detail at 1 to 5, and an exploded axonometric. So what I'm going to do is just give you a shortened version of how those were created. So if I want to create a detail, and that detail was kind of a split detail, what I do is create a view, make sure I'm in MV viewports. So PS viewports. Right, so I'm just going to go into PS viewports. There we go. And I go MV for view. And I'm going to make sure my view, just going to zoom in so I can see my view a bit better. And go front. Now, this is the actual model I had created. So I make sure that I'm in a 1 to 5 version. So that's my scale, 1 to 5. And I'm just going to pan over here. That's my 1 to 5 there. And I'll just double click out here so I can see this dimension here. And shades of grey isn't really correct for an elevation, so I'll go into hidden. And I've got my views there, right? So I'm happy with the top. So what I'm going to do is just zoom out, pan up a little bit, zoom out again. And generally what I'll do here now is I'll just copy this top viewport. So CP for copy, and I'll just copy that down. And now I'm going to pan up, and to keep everything sort of aligned, if I press Shift, that'll help me align things. Okay, so sometimes I just deliberately misalign it here, just so that when I use align, I can see that it's been corrected. Okay, so now what I have to do is I have to align this with this up here. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll use MV setup, and I'm going to align, and I'm going to create a vertical alignment. So vertical align, so I pick this vertical line, yeah, and then pick this vertical line. And they align correctly there, okay? And that's my detail done. And then the next thing would be to create this exploded axonometric, and I'll show you how that's done now. So again, what I can do is I can create a viewport, so MV for viewport. Just escape out of that. MV for viewport, and MV for viewport. And what I want is an axonometric view of the top here. So I'm just going to go into there, just double click into that. So it's going to be an axonometric view. I can just get that. I think it's looking at the back. There we go. Yeah. Zoom in, and we'll get our shaded view, shaded with edges. Just shaded actually works better. Shades of grey, and zoom in here. Now, the problem here is that I can see all of these dimensions. So what I'm going to do is, if I just click out here, I go LA for my layers, and I double click into here. And now what I can start to do is I can just start to turn off these layers I don't actually need. So if I just scroll down here, I don't need the text layer on in this one. Section layer there. The rail I don't need on it. And we can see how now, and it's the critical ones here are the leg. Oh, I have to turn the top on. That's the one. That's the only one I want. Okay. Just have to check the. Okay, so the rail is on, and then I turn the dim 5 and the dim 10, and I'm just left with that top there. That's all I want. So zoom in there. Then I'm just going to check what scale that's in. That's 1 to 10. So make sure that this is 1 to 10. Okay, and then I come out of that. So now what I want to do is I want to align this edge with this internal edge here. So MV, setup, align, vertical alignment, and pick that line there, and then that line there, and there they are aligned. Okay, and if I just double click out of that, make my viewport a bit bigger, and just a bit smaller there, and now I can just move my viewport down so it touches those lines. There we go. That's it.